Welcome back to the Think Education podcast. I'm Chris Hill, joined by Judith Lammy in our ongoing, I was going to say quest to solve change, but our quest to understand and discuss change is probably a bit more accurate. So we've had a couple of conversations already about changes that have been happening, changes to leadership, changes in some of the external partnerships or collaborative models that we're either engaging in or are seeing on the landscape. And then, you open any news publication or anything and, oh, look, something else has changed and something else has happened. And to add to the pile, and we've got, it's not a new one, is it? The international student issue. I mean, this has obviously been at either the spark or at the heart or the cause, or depending on which perspective you're looking at it, the rallying cry for a lot that's been going on in global higher education recently. We talked to Douglas about this. I can't really remember, but that's
probably about 8 or so months ago.
Well, I suppose it's probably longer when you consider our hiatus.
Could be.
Yeah. So we
need to get you back, Douglas.
We do absolutely. So we've got this issue then of increased, can we say policy? I don't know if policy responses to international students, that sounds completely wrong.
Possibly political responses.
There you go.
I don't feel that any of the responses, and I have to say this is my own personal opinion, I don't feel that in the UK anyway, any of the responses are driven by anything to do with education. I think that they are largely driven by politics. Indeed, even in the newspaper, various newspaper reports that are written, I think mostly you'll find that they're written by political editors and not their educational correspondents, which is in itself an interesting point.
Yes. I guess maybe before we look at more specifically at the international student issue, it does, that point that you make is part of a broader concern or challenge or reality, in that education, yes, it's a public good, but it is also a political tool. Particularly when we're looking at transnational and international education, it's very much used as a part of political national strategy, economic development. Like it has a very clear role in the way countries are shaping themselves and attracting collaborative engagement. But particularly within the UK case, it's always like, well, no, we stand aside from, we're independent, we do, and then the real world comes knocking, and it's the case of actually those lines that were, I don't know if blurred or unseen or unlooked at, very much come to the forefront, right? And they cause genuine bureaucratic, logistical, financial challenges.
Yes.
Catastrophes. I don't know, somewhere in that gap. It's. How is this seen? Is it seen as something that, we talked about this. We talked about this before about the lobbying power and the ability to impact those sort of decision making. Is this seen as something that we have to weather the storm and find the cuts and save the money and etc. Or is it something that it's a blip and it'll right itself? How is it within the conversations or the committees? Is it just a thing you have to just bang your head against?
I suppose one situation is, and we've talked about this a bit, haven't we, Chris, in terms of you can't be in a constant state of crisis, really. You can only be in crisis mode for so long before it just becomes commonplace, and that isn't sustainable for anybody, in lots of different ways. And I think that one of the big challenges at the moment for any academic institution in the UK, probably. I mean, some may be in a better place than others, but I think all are struggling. Is that there are sort of fundamental funding issues that we can try and lobby about. We can try and, you know, provide the data, provide the background, but it's so obvious. It's so clear. Everybody knows the situation. They know the reality and they know why we're in the situation we're in, but almost for other reasons won't do anything about it. And I think that, and I can also though understand that clearly if we're even talking about, you know, government coffers, there's very important things that draw on any resource that the government needs to issue. You know, we obviously need to support our health system. That's clear. We you know, we need to support all of those kind of things that we have on a fundamental basis across the country, like we do in all of our countries. You know, and I don't know whether it is just that, whether there's been mismanagement, even from a government's point of view, in terms of, well, you know, we still pay all of our taxes, we still do all the things we have to do, that still continues constantly to increase. So, you know, why have we got these kind of situations, you know? But so I understand that in many ways, I think for people, higher education really isn't as high a priority as other things. And I probably would agree with that, with them. You know, if you're thinking of your health, if you're thinking of all lots of different things, and then obviously, you know, that will be a major priority. But I suppose, you know, on the one hand, we're having people say, you know, you can only charge X for your programs, you can only do this. So there are restrictions. But on the other hand, then they're saying you're autonomous institutions, you can decide what to do yourself, and no, we can't help you because you've got, you know, you're your own, you know, free institution. You're like, well, yes, but we're not. And I suppose that in itself is one of the issues. You know, you either make it something that completely, you know, institutions totally, that it's all made private and you all have the freedom to do what you want to do, or you go back to the way it was and you do have a sustainable and suitable funding stream. But and there are discussions taking place on that at the moment. People know that you can't be in 2025 charging the same or for a product that you charged in 2013,
sure,
and expect that the people who are responsible for the product and producing it are going to be in businesses that are financially viable. It would be like, you know, if we were car dealerships and we were selling all of our cars for the same prices that we were in 2013, or all of our anythings, you know, chocolate bars, you know, that's one of my favorites as a would-be truck
I was
driver.
wondering when we were going to come back to that.
You got to come back to,
yes.
to Yorkie bars product placements. Yes, please, Yorkies, send them this way. You know, it would be great if you could go down to the end of the road and get a bag of chips for 10p that you used to be able to do when I was a kid. You know, I remember clutching my 10p and going next door to my uncle's shop to go and get some chips there. But you can't because they cost more, because everything else costs more, because costs have gone up. So fundamentally, there's a big issue, but because it was managed so poorly at the time in terms of when people communicate, everybody thought at the time that the cost of it all had gone up from 3,000 to 9,000 plus, because that's what people saw. What they weren't told, or it wasn't articulated well enough, was that actually there was that, and there was the government subsidy. So what universities were getting was X amount, and actually now it's exactly the same. And so that's been kept the same, you know, and I think that's the that's the big challenge, is that because of that, because of research funding, you know, losing your money, the only way in which you can make any sustainable, you know, funding is through international. And here that is, you know, universities have lost dramatically numbers of good quality students. You know, one thing I was reflecting on, though, when I was talking to some of the students yesterday, actually, I'm thinking how wonderful as well they always are, and how resilient, and how they managed to carry on doing things despite all of the challenges they've got, wherever they might be or wherever they've come from, is where are some of the students going that aren't coming here? Because as we know, there are challenges. This is why we do need to get Douglas and other colleagues back on to tell us what it's like in far-flung places to the places that we happen to be located. We know that there are challenges in a lot of the major countries that have, you know, that receive international students. We know that there is in America, we know that there is in Australia, we know that there is in Canada. And again, maybe we need to also get Jazreel back to say, has that, you know, the fact that the hubs like Malaysia and like obviously yourself, I mean, maybe Chris, you can talk a little bit about what's happening in Dubai and the region as well. Have you noticed, or have they noticed a significant increase in students coming from other countries who normally would have gone elsewhere, you know, because they still all want to study, don't they? They want to do what they're doing. And it is great that there is online for students that want to study online. There is TNE for students that want TNE. But for many students, for whatever reason, and often it's a very personal reason, but for whatever reason, they want to go and study somewhere else, you know. Yeah. So, I mean, have you noticed that change in, you know, not just, let's say, in your institution, but across, you know, Dubai and the region? Have there been significantly more students that have been coming in from elsewhere?
No, not particularly, no. I mean, it's a fairly sustained approach, but I've had a lot of conversations, you know, whether it's at a conference here or there, with people who are looking to try and capitalize on wherever those students are.
Yes.
And looking to potentially therefore attract them. So it's certainly part of the conversation here. And I mean, that's been a fairly also constant within, particularly in the Dubai education sector, where, you know, KHDA is looking to, and I don't mean looking as in now, has been looking, you know, for many years, to make Dubai a destination rather than a stopping point. So to attract people to come to work after study, which obviously is a very different approach than is now being seen in many other international hubs, you know, where it's a case of you can't even do either of them. It used to be you could study, but working was hard, and now it's increasingly hard to work, to study, let alone even think about the work post graduation. So I think we'll certainly see that, you know, developing in our sector here. I mean, you know, we've had conversations we've had with students in the past, and, you know, indeed bits that were contributed to the Student Voice chapter in previous books. You know, it's very much a case of, as you say, students still want to travel, they still want to study, they still want education as a vehicle to improving employability or, you know, skills agenda, and they are looking for the experience, right? They are looking for that. And so post-COVID, it you know, it obviously, it didn't just dip, it dropped completely during COVID, but then the post-COVID numbers were, if not equal, higher than pre-COVID. So, you know, there's seemingly no shortage of student appetite for that. And yet increasingly countries are making it effectively impossible for a variety of reasons. But
do you think more students are going into work? I mean, there's in England, obviously, you know, there are the degree apprenticeships that, although I haven't worked at an English university for a number of years now, so I don't know really what that's like, but that did seem to be a trend that was increasing. There were lots of challenges when it came to the apprenticeships levy, and delivering apprenticeships isn't the easiest thing in the world, but then what is? But it did certainly seem to be something that was getting some traction. And why not? I mean, you would almost judge students for not doing it. Why wouldn't you do a degree apprenticeship when you can get it funded and you get a great job after it? I mean, it'd be daft not to. Some universities are putting on accelerated degrees with corporate partners. You know, it's a really interesting one that I was reading about a little while ago, which I think we've mentioned before, with University of Derby and Rolls-Royce. You know, again, something that's been mentioned before. But you know, there are still a lot of students that, even with, and this is a case in Wales, even with a slight demographic dip, I mean, the university I'm at the moment is doing reasonably well, actually, when it comes to the numbers of students coming from Wales coming to the university. We've increased our market share, but many haven't, and we're just not sure where the students are going, you know, because there isn't that option here. It's a very different funding model when it comes to things like degree apprenticeships. And it would, so I'm not sure. Are more of them going into work now? Are they thinking maybe degrees aren't for them? Are they doing micro credentials? Are they doing other types of things and thinking, well, I'll do a few things now, stack them and use them for later. I might go back and do that. So it would be, so I have absolutely no idea what some of them are doing, but it would be really interesting to find that out, or if there's any, maybe that can be something we're looking forward to welcoming in a future podcast. Janet, the lady that only has to have her first name, and we all know who she is, but for those of you that have been living on the beach for the last 10 years, Janet Ilieva, you know, we could ask Janet, because maybe that might be something that she's aware of, or there's some data on, but it would be interesting to know where some of the students are going.
It would. Equally getting a sense of the value of the vocational, the value of you know, the work versus I mean, and this is, sadly, this is a kind of like an underpinning reality for the last couple of years, which is, as you know, traditional jobs don't recruit the way that they used to, and universities, therefore, the sort of kind of the central value of it as a vehicle to employability, if the majority of the degrees, or a percentage of the degrees at least, don't lead to the way they used to, and you know, from particular sending countries, you've still got that very traditional view of, we're going to create this many engineers, we're going to create this many, etc. And you know, effectively you get to the point where it's like, well, then I'm inheriting debt, or I'm gaining debt from a degree that doesn't actually have the value that I thought it was going to, or that my parents thought it would, or you know, my grandparents thought it would, in which case my children I probably won't send, right? Because there isn't the same logical approach. And then you now factor in this, and it's be interesting to see. I mean, you do see, you know, these, we've talked about this before, the, you know, it's not a daily occurrence, but probably weekly, you'll see, you know, a post, even if it's just on LinkedIn, about another British university either opening or looking to open a branch campus somewhere, right? So, you know, that maybe we've almost gone back another rotation within T&E, which is, it's a case of not just about providing access, it's literally about going after the market, because the market simply cannot come to you. So it's, you know, it's not about, it's about making money, but it's not about making the massive profit. It's about ameliorating the shortfall, right? Which is saying, you know, the wrong thing is go to T&E because I'm going to become rich. But now it's like, well, actually, no, I need to go to T&E because I need to offset the loss of the international student recruitment market.
I think that's absolutely right. And, you know, as we've said, and people will say multiple times, you know, you don't go into T&E to make yourself a lot of profit, as opposed to money. You know, your net gain from T&E is there, but isn't you know, substantial from that point of view. But of course it is enough. It has to be, otherwise people wouldn't be in it. When people say that there's no money in TNE, then obviously that can't be accurate either. Otherwise, why would people be doing it? So I think just to be sensible about it, obviously that it is, it is something that institutions decide to do because they can see that there's a benefit to it, and they can see that that benefit is partly financial, but maybe also to do with reputation, maybe also to do with links into business and industry, research that can be undertaken within that country, probably a little bit more effectively than if you're not there, and you can then work with companies in that country, other research, other sort of academic partners. So there's lots of reasons why you might do it, but it's also got to, there's got to be green lines for all of those things, or black lines maybe rather than red lines anyway. But it is it as well though? I mean, but we know as well that it is a big challenge, and it takes you a long time to get TNE off the ground. And it certainly does take a significant amount of resource and time before anything starts to go above the x-axis, and so you've got to think of it very carefully. And I suppose there are places that, and as you say, there's probably certainly not a week goes past here without there being something either in the pie or in the that we notice in any of the LinkedIn posts or other types of, or university world news, isn't it? Something like UWN anyway, where somebody's deciding at the moment to open up a campus in India seems to be the favourite.
It does. It does.
But we know that's a big challenge. We know that, and do they have experience of doing it? Sometimes you'll see somebody's doing it and you think, oh, well, they've got campuses here, there, and everywhere. So they probably, they've got an internal system back at probably what is their main campus, but who knows, that will help them to accelerate it, that will mean that they can manage the quality, that they can, do what they need to do to support the students, etc., etc. For many, it might be their first step into the space, and that's a big step to make, from possibly doing a few collaborative programs, maybe franchises, but as we talked about previously, franchising now is a word that tends not to get said out loud. So all of a sudden to go from not doing very much to, oh, let's go and set up a campus somewhere. Now it might, and I suppose though, one thing it does do, or can help do, but again, only in the medium term, is to spread your risk. Is that if at least you've got that campus there, or if you've got different modes of delivery, different forms of delivery, then it means that you're doing different things, and therefore if one of the other things that you are doing gets compromised, then you've got other things that can at least shoulder that burden a little bit. So, if you are at an institution in the UK and basically you deliver your undergraduate and your postgraduate programs to home students, you've got a few international students and you do a bit of research, that's fine. But if one of those income routes suffers, then you've not got, what have you got to fall back on? Whereas if you've also got online developments, if you've also got short-term courses, CPD, micro-credentials, if you've also got TNE, be it through partnerships, be it through delivery in other countries, validations, franchises, and campuses overseas, you've at least got those other streams that can continue to, I suppose, coming right back to when we started, if this was where we started, to start to keep you going, keep you afloat while you try and rectify the challenge that you've got in what is one of your core streams. The point, however, being that if you can't sort those out, what you're doing won't be sustainable. And that, I think, is the issue for universities at present is that we are in crisis mode. People are trying to, well, can we save money here? Do we have to have quite so many people in our, I always pick on procurement, don't I? Because as I've said to you before, Richard here runs it. It's a great guy and it's a great team. But, you know, do we need 50 people in that, I don't mean in Richard's department in procurement, but, you know, do we need 50 people in that department? Can we just have 45? How much does that save us? Do we need to be delivering this program over here? Do we need 50 modules there? Can we just have 45? How much does that save us? So you're thinking about the savings to deal with the shortfall, but none of that is sustainable. None of it will grow you out of a problem. And I think that is the big issue at the moment, is that we are tinkering around the edges to keep us afloat. What we're doing is bailing out water using a bucket
with the hole in it.
But there's still a hole in the boat, and you can keep bailing it out, but eventually, I mean, it might be a little while. It depends how big the hole is. I think the thing is, the hole's probably getting a bit bigger, you know.
And it's raining.
And it's raining, and you know, your bucket's probably got a bit of a hole in it as well, or maybe you're trying to do it with a colander. Look up colanders for those of you who don't know what colanders are. And I think that is the issue. We're not dealing with the root of the problem. We're dealing with the consequence of it. And that's what's happening, I think, in a lot of institutions in the UK. I think that's probably what's happening in other institutions across the world in different places. It would be really interesting if there's somebody out there that could come on to talk to us a bit about what's happening in Canada, because there's lots of, I know you read a lot of things about that, but I'm always conscious that what you always read, certainly in your, you know, glorious national press, having known what they write about things that I do know about, I always read things from other people's national press with a certain amount of caution. You know, so it would be really great if there was somebody, you know, who knows a little bit more about this. I mean, maybe this is something in the future we could pick up, Chris.
Absolutely.
Because there will be, you know, just hearing about what it is like on the ground. You know, what are the reasons why other countries are in the situations they're in? Has that reason, or has that challenge, is it passed? Has it solved a problem? And therefore, you know, does it mean that things can start to get on the, you know, the path they were on, or are there other fundamental issues? You know, the thing is, you can't constantly be in crisis mode, can you? It isn't healthy for you personally, and it isn't healthy for your institution.
No, it's not at all. No, although we are doing our best to disprove that theory.
Yes. It's not working, but we are doing our best.
Excellent. Okay, so so it would be nice to have, we do have a few guests coming up in the next few episodes, but it would be nice to hear from, as you say, from colleagues from different systems and different countries and different experiences, just to get a more rounded understanding of, understanding is probably the wrong word, awareness of what's going on. I think that's probably fair. Okay, excellent. All right, well then, onwards and upwards.